Hi, I'm Mark Mifflin. I'm a member of the Legislative Committee for the Illinois Defense Council. Just to provide you a little report following the scheduled adjournment date of the spring session of the Illinois General Assembly. The scheduled adjournment date was June 1st, and that date came and went. The major issues remain unresolved in the legislature, particularly the budget and budgetary items, including spending reductions and tax increases that might be necessary to provide a balanced budget. The bottom line on the whole process is that the legislature was itself unable to reach a budget, and certainly the governor and the legislative leaders, the Republican governor and the Democratic legislative leaders, real acrimony remains between the two. So there's not any budget deal in sight, which means that the legislature will continue to meet at least sporadically, particularly in June, because the new fiscal year takes effect on July 1. So there's some outside hope that there will be a budget by July 1 for the new fiscal year. I frankly, personally doubt that that will happen. The legislature is going to meet every Wednesday during June, so the limited number of days, I think, will mean that it's not possible. And I think that that's a good indication that the legislative leaders don't believe it's possible either. Because it's unlikely there will be a deal, I think that all of these issues will be put over until after the November election. I think the Democrats believe that there are good issues for them in the election by pointing to Rauner and his unwillingness to pass a budget. And Rauner believes that he can blame the Democrats because of their unwillingness to pass a budget even among themselves, even though they do have a 3/5 majority in both the House and the Senate. So why is this important to the Illinois Defense Council? It's very important because Governor Rauner has indicated that in conjunction with the budget, he wants some turnaround agenda items, that's his term, a turnaround agenda, to help change the culture in Illinois of continuing to spend and continuing to raise taxes at the expense of business and as well as the citizens. So he is pointing to certain specific items of very much of interest to the Illinois Defense Council. Particularly, there's a lot of discussion lately about work comp reform that Governor Rauner is insisting upon before he will agree to a budget. And there are some other tort issues too. The work comp issues are primarily causation, which we have had, the Illinois Defense Council has had some discussions with the governor's office about why that might not be as good an idea as maybe they think, or at least there should be some tweaks to the discussion, and also some benefit reduction, though the kind of issues that would lower the costs in workers' comp. Drug price control is another issue that is being discussed. There's probably 10 different issues in work comp that are being discussed. Again, to no avail at this point. The Democrats have steadfastly refused to address anything that would hurt labor or the trial lawyers, such as benefit reductions. And Governor Rauner and the business community continues to insist that they do need some sort of reduction in the expense of the system in order to reduce the costs for the business community and for the state of Illinois, because they are self-insured. The other tort issues that are hanging out there are not as front burner as the work comp issue, but they are still out there. They're still a part of the governor's turnaround agenda. Venue reform is one. The Illinois Defense Council has not taken a real strong stand on that. Some of the issues that are being discussed in venue are not supported by the Illinois Defense Council. Others are, so we are involved in the discussions, but we're not pushing the venue reform as hard as maybe some of the other members of the business community are. The issues which we are very strongly supporting, which are also on the table, although not on the front burner at this time, are joint and several liability reform, including putting all of the tortfeasors on the verdict form when you're evaluating the defendant's liability, just like they are on the verdict form when the plaintiff's liability is being considered by the jury. This obviously affects the 50% rule for the plaintiffs and the 25% rule for defendants in determining whether the plaintiffs can recover and the joint and several liability of defendants. So we have, our bills were introduced. Representative Sandak introduced House Bill 4426 in conjunction with our work, and Senator Radonio, the Senate Minority Leader, introduced Senate Bill 2310 on these joint and several liability issues. So we do continue to push those and hope that sooner or later they will come back to the forefront in conjunction with the governor's discussions with the legislative leaders and the legislature. And we have mentioned those. We are working with the business community as well as Governor Rauner on those issues. Otherwise, in the legislature, this is the end of the spring session. We have just recently been involved with House Bill 6083. That was a bill by some Southern Illinois representatives and senators that, in response to a death, it's called Molly's Law. It dealt with the statute of limitations in wrongful death cases, and as introduced, it extended the statute to a discovery rule for the statute of limitations in all wrongful death cases. We worked with the proponents and the sponsors to indicate why that was not a good idea, and the bill was amended in conjunction with our work to apply only to certain very limited circumstances and only to the one particular wrongdoer and not to any third parties that may be also liable under certain circumstances, like the Kentucky Fried Chicken case was the example that came up. So right now it has passed, and likely the governor will sign that, but it's limited to certain criminal type activities and it's to the individual involved, and it's a 5-year statute of limitations instead of an open-ended discovery rule. During the course of the legislative session this spring, we'd also been involved with a bill dealing with the Peppers issue, the conflict of interest independent counsel issue. That bill is Senate Bill 2801, and it was held up this year for further discussion with the insurance industry as well as the other parties that are involved. The other issues that we've been involved in, there's several bills that were filed to overturn the Kakos case dealing with the jury numbers and jury fees. Those bills were all held because the Kakos case is still pending in the Illinois Supreme Court. That was argued in May, and we expect a decision maybe as early as July, and certainly by the fall. We dealt with other legislation about dealing with confidentiality orders, the Medical Studies Act, and there was a bill introduced to reinstate the public duty rule, which did not go anywhere. None of those bills have passed. They're all still hanging out there, but they will expire at the end of this session, which will be in January of 2017. So we will remain vigilant. We will work on the issues of interest to our members and our clients, and we'd welcome any input or any thoughts you might have about those bills or any other bills that come up. And we certainly welcome and appreciate any impact you might have by calling your legislators, particularly if you have a relationship with them, to let them know our position. So remain involved in the process for us. If you have any questions about the Legislative Committee and what we're doing, please don't hesitate to contact the IDC. Thank you very much.